Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. I have the great pleasure today to have with me Tudor Mărginean. He's a great friend, and he has a master's degree in philosophy and another master's degree in data science. And he's now currently doing a PhD in, well, philosophy, but the philosophy of mathematics, Bayesian inference. He will tell us more. You can find him on Substack on the alias-based Bayesian. Welcome, Tudor.
Thank you. And if you allow me to elaborate more about my PhD
Please.
thesis, it's not exactly philosophy of mathematics. It's more Bayesian epistemology and philosophy of science, philosophy of statistics, not philosophy of mathematics in general. And usually it's about reasoning, about I'm trying to find objective criteria for the priors, in Bayesian conditionalization. But it's a bit technical. Let's not delve into it.
Sure. I wanted to give you this introduction regarding philosophy because this is actually how we met. And in my opinion, Tudor is maybe the only person in the faculty of philosophy who has a truly independent way of thinking. Well, my experience in the faculty of philosophy was not very extensive, but I wanted to have Tudor on the program because in the past years we have discussed a lot of things regarding the reality around us, regarding the events taking place, the pandemic, well, the public discourse in general, and this public discourse has had a lot of support from the institutional level in Romania, and also from the public intellectuals. So I wanted to ask Tudor to give us a piece of his mind regarding how he sees generally this public discourse and the role that intellectuals play in it, public intellectuals, and how he came to realize that there was something rotten in Denmark.
In Denmark?
Well, it's the Hamlet line, something is rotten in Denmark.
Okay, yeah.
So in our case, it was, I don't know, in the
I didn't
kingdom
read
of the
Shakespeare.
rules-based order.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's start with the faculty of philosophy. I wouldn't say I'm the only one with an independent thinking. I can name a few other persons, but that already says a lot because a faculty of philosophy should be, the place where critical thinking is at home. If philosophy teaches us anything, it should be how to, challenge the authorities, the epistemic authorities, how to problematize everything. Yet that usually happens, but not with the mainstream discourse. Never with the mainstream discourse. You can go to seminars on philosophy of science, on epistemology, and it's all fine. You discuss a lot of genuinely interesting stuff, but when the governments are trying to force us to take that specific medication, all of a sudden any criticism is framed as an anti-scientific attitude, bigotry, sheer irrationality.
So in theoretical settings, they are able to identify the
Yes,
problem and to
so
identify the hidden
they are
assumptions.
completely unable to transfer the theoretical frame, to put it into practice. It's quite surprising, and it's even more surprising for those dealing with political philosophy, ethics, political philosophy, because. For example, I think when we are talking about different wars, like the war in Ukraine, the most blatant moral issue, besides the obvious ones, the who started the war, why the war is bad, and so on, forced mobilization. I don't see anyone talking about that, talking about the morality of forcing people to fight to defend the state. And you know that discourse about whataboutism. If you challenge the official narrative about how the war started, you're engaging in whataboutism or in blaming the victim. You'd expect someone who studied political philosophy to notice some things. First of all, that who's the victim here? Is the victim the state? Is the victim a given government or other civil population?
No, the victim is even more abstract. It's the rules-based international order. That's the
That,
victim.
that's the real victim, yes. So, for example, yeah, of course, the civil population in a war zone is the main victim, is the only victim that really matters. But is the government the victim, or is part of the, or is at least in part the executioner, the offender?
Yeah, I
Uh,
find it particularly funny in our case because in the first year of philosophy, we had this teaching assistant who subsequently became an expert in the ethics of war, and he's now a permanent guest on these talk shows about the war. And even though he's an ethician, he's like a
this is yeah.
political philosopher. He's a warmonger essentially. So he's using his credentials as philosopher in order to basically trump up support for a greater engagement in the war and so on, and to basically give a moral label to it. So through the fact that he has a PhD in the ethics of war, he sees himself as a certifying organization. He can give the okay, this position is ethical, that position is not ethical, and yeah, kind of the
Yeah, I
ethical
mean,
certification registry.
yeah, of course, it's uh, it's a fine balance to walk around here, because after you reject the mainstream discourse, the next pitfall is to fully embrace the alternative one. And since 2022, I think I gave up on a lot of channels who, in my humble opinion, were engaging in full bullshitting. So, uh, it's very hard when you feel that you belong in the, educated, rationalist crowd uh, on most topics. So you reject the craziest conspiracies. You reject the straight up lying, for example, the straight up propaganda that comes from the side that they also criticize. And then you see what they are doing, and they're engaging in the same practices. And you start to feel politically and epistemically homeless. You belong nowhere. And I think that happened to you. For example, you also moved from one side to the other, and then you came to the conclusion that this other side is also captive to some, uh, propaganda, to some uh, memetics. I mean, take the Romanian local sovereigntism, which overnight became a sort of America first in Europe.
Yeah, and America first is kind of Israel first, and they are kind of like doing America first, even though America doesn't do America first. So
Yes, and then you realize that you're politically homeless. You're not represented, truly represented by anyone.
yeah, for sure, this is also why I left Romania, and not only for this. I mean, in my opinion, Romania is becoming a dangerous environment for expressing dissenting opinions in general, just because it is regarding itself as being on the front line in all respects. So therefore, yeah, I decided to move a bit farther from the actual front line. But yeah, it's true that it's hard to be intellectually honest, and at the same time to continue being an intellectual in a class sense, to belong to the class of intellectuals, because the majority of the public intellectuals in at least in the West, I have no idea how it is in other places, but in the West there is this well, it's not only a military industrial complex, it's a military industrial academic well, it encompasses many institutions, but academia is one of them. So there is a strong connection between the points of view expressed by public intellectuals with academic credentials and the official point of view. I don't know exactly what are the links that create this conformity, and actually there are people who have elaborated on it. There's this Substack of Nel Bonilla. I'm not sure if you've
Yes,
seen it.
yes,
Or, yeah.
yes. I
So there
saw.
is a way in which academia manufactures conformity through all sorts of grants and scholarships from political, even military institutions, and yeah.
Yeah, I remember listening to Almut Rochovansky, I think is her name. Have you heard about her?
No.
Almut Rochovansky. Yeah, she's a feminist, leftist, German activist.
Hmm.
Uh, but she's her position is very anti-war. So she's campaigning against the militarization of Germany, against forced mobilization, like many other leftists that we, the sovereigntists in Romania, uh, uh, are used to. Label as progressive, as maybe degenerates, libs, but they're strikingly similar to us in many of on the many issues that we care about. Yeah, but yeah, that was a parenthesis. So she said at some point in during a podcast. So she worked with various NGOs, and we on the anti-NGO, anti-foreign meddling side tend to think that these NGOs are kind of uh, not evil, but entities with mean intentions that are trying to subvert the local authorities and maybe to bring in some foreign agenda. And she said that many of the people in this working in these NGOs are not thinking like that. So they're not aware of their role. They're sometimes they really care about the issues that their NGOs supposedly care about. For example, I don't know, animal welfare or the environment, LGBT rights, all sorts of stuff. This sort of stuff. And they often perceive that the local authorities, are indifferent to that, and they see, the Messiah, the one who understands their issues, in some foreign founder, in some foreign billionaire. Does not name names, or
So
some
she
foreign
describes
institution.
the flow as being the other way than we see it. So she sees as a local group of
Yeah, yeah.
concern,
Yeah.
grassroots
So
organization that actually seeks funding rather than the funder coming over to the country and
so the
forming
founder
its
doesn't.
own astroturf civil society.
Exactly. Exactly. So the founder doesn't always create, from the grassroots. Doesn't create from scratch the movement. Usually, some base is already there, and they're just hoping someone will lend an ear to their pet issue. And she also said that LGBT, so pro-LGBT NGOs in Russia have the same problem. So they're during many years, especially during the 2000s, early 2010s, they were funded from the West. But gradually, as the tensions with the West escalated, the Russian government, cranked down on them. So
Mhm.
they started to introduce anti-foreign agent laws, and to try to completely stop their activities. So many of them tried then to find internal funding
Mhm.
because they cared about their pet issues. And yeah, of course, the government doesn't uh, doesn't want to risk anything, so they're clamping down on them nevertheless. So, but that's how
Well,
it
in
works.
Russia, the issue with LGBT is also that it is, I think, banned in itself, not only because it was foreign funded, but because Russia, being a conservative
Yeah,
society, bans LGBT
that's also
propaganda. So therefore, it's. But I don't know if it were an environmental NGO or something like this, like I don't know, take Greenpeace or their all World Wildlife Fund for Nature and all of these things. So these NGOs that are single issue and that actually care about a problem, I'm sure they can have a sovereigntist tint to them, and even in the context in which they used to be funded from abroad, perhaps they can gather up local funding or state funding if they're on an issue that is legally allowed. That's also a thing.
uh, but what I wanted to point at with that example was that even in academia, I think many people don't think so, don't imagine themselves as being, on a specific side as opposed to the other, as they, as if they're taking some deliberate political decisions. They see it as natural. I mean, of course, I'm with the good side, the civilized people, and I'm not with the barbarians, the autocrats, or however they present, the non-aligned or the multipolar world, or the vaccinated, or the other. I mean, they are tend to be genuinely nice people, uh, many of them. There's a difference. For example, if you watch, a NED, a National Endowment for Democracy conference, you can see that the top figures there, they have an agenda, and they deliberately lie about their intentions. I think most of the other people engaged with those institutions in academia, in the NGO sphere, they don't know that.
Yeah, for
They're
sure. I
not.
mean, I also took funding from the National Endowment for Democracy when I was working for this Romanian think tank
Yeah,
a few years ago.
you think it's about a specific issue, and you're glad that you found some funding.
Well, yeah, it was about the Republic of Moldova, how to integrate the Republic of Moldova into Europe, how to transfer best practices from Romanian integration. But yeah, it's a public report that I authored, and there in the list of fundings there, among others, the National Endowment for Democracy. And back when I was working for this think tank in Romania, it was at the time the leading think tank. I had no qualms about it being financed from the United States. I thought it's just how things happen. It's just the normal way of things to happen. If you have politics and if you have a political activity, the most normal thing in the world is to have the agenda financed by the State Department, by the well, United States foundations.
But you know that verb peeling, so, or to something peel. If you spend any time on the internet, you have heard about, I don't know, the red pill, the China pill, the geopolitics pill, all sorts of pills. Is that moment when you just change your perspective about the world, due to a single idea. So, for example, the red pill is mainly about dating, but for example, the China pill is supposed to be, you realize just how important China is for the world economy, how fast China improves in anything related to technology. Uh, or, for example, if you adopt realism as a theory of international politics, international relations, you start to see everything that happens in the world in terms of relations of power, who stands to gain from each action. You start to care less about ideologies and domestic policies. And I think when you're thinking about how a state gets controlled by external forces, uh, when you start to read something, to document yourself about that, even a little bit, it's like a veil drops off your ears. you just can't unsee it after that. And
Yeah.
now, for example, for us, it's astonishing to think about some obvious examples that probably we didn't realize have that view changing power. An example, if you know any history or any local history, you know that the Ottoman Empire used to plant its own little bonds, the federal regime in the two Romanian states. You know that the Roman Empire used to take some, the son of a chieftain of some tribe, raised him in Rome, and then plant it in front of their tribe to serve as a client state of Rome. But for some reason, when today someone goes to study abroad, gets funding there, is educated in the politics, in the traditions of the hegemon, and comes back here, uh, we don't realize that the mechanism, may be similar. That the intentions of the hegemon may not be just purely altruistic.
Yeah,
Uh,
basically, we view the world in this pseudo-liberal lens, in which there is a benign hegemon taking care of all of us, as Rute calls him Daddy. So there is Daddy, and of course, Daddy is benevolent. Daddy has only good intentions, and of course, Daddy wants to educate his children, to educate them into civilization. So this is how people can rationalize it. Maybe, I mean, of course, it's a definite client patron regime. It's a patronage or a vassality relation, but people rationalize it in the sense that it's the only way. This is what civilization entails. We have to become civilized, and we have to adhere to the norms of the West. And in order to learn about them, we have to be led by the agents of the said West. I just want to make a brief comment. So the reason I took on this T-shirt is because it's also with philosophers. So to rival a bit with Tudor's T-shirt, it's the only philosophy themed T-shirt I have. So it was not meant as a political statement. It's just that well, to have philosophies in debate.
and even if it was a political statement, I mean, it was a big problem.
Ah, well, I already appear on the blacklists, so and I'm already called a Bolshevik on the internet. If you Google my name, Bolshevik Tsirka did this, Bolshevik Tsirka said that. So yeah, it's just one more piece of evidence in my file.
Yeah, I am also not that fond of Kant, but it's the only philosophy T-shirt that I possess. So yeah, so what I wanted to ask you, how do you see the uh, dominant discourse in Europe versus the United States evolving, with respect to foreign policy, or the most pressing issues about, how our states are run, the interplay between money and politics, because I think the United States is in much better place. So I'm much more optimistic about the United States at this point.
Really?
And I'm,
In what sense?
yes, much more optimistic about the United States. I don't know if you follow their most popular media figures, like on the right, Tucker Carlson, Kennesons, the
Mhm.
crowd, and on the left, people like Hassan Piker, the Young Turks.
Ah, okay, the
Uh,
Young Turks. Yeah, yeah.
yes,
They've all become peeled. I don't know in which direction. So Israel
yes,
peeled.
yes, mostly Israel built, but not only that. I, I think since the full war, since the last round of hostilities with Iran, maybe saw that Tucker Carlson apologized for supporting Trump. Uh,
We've become foreign policy peeled in general. Imperial
yes,
peeled. Imperialist peeled.
yes, yes. They're now openly talking about. um, how the lobbies work to always promote war, to always promote corporate interests. They're talking about the Epstein class, so that's how they call it. Even the current administration is the Epstein class, and it's an open war between the uh, old school American conservatism, like the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, the likes of Jordan, maybe even Jordan Peterson, not to uh, even mention Fox News,
So
and
basically, social conservatism versus the
that's
new
versus the so-called woke right,
woke
like
right.
they're
Okay.
the woke right, like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and yeah, I mean they tend to be a bit crazy. Of course, I have lots of disagreements with the new woke right on all the issues that I don't really care about, but on the issues that actually matter, I'm fully on their side. And
Very
on the
cool.
left, on the left, the more leftist radical side, like Hassan Piker and many others, they were openly anti-establishment. I think since 2023.
No,
I
okay.
think yes, I think the old left has a strong coming back since the war in Gaza. After Occupy Wall Street, and especially during the second Obama administration, they started to become more and more focused on identity politics
Yeah,
and less
exactly.
focused on economic issues, and less anti-war. But now the tide is changing back. So
Well, I would like to share your optimism and regarding these trends that can be seen on the internet. But how much of this enthusiasm is
it,
actually
it's not
carrying
only
some
on the
traction
internet.
in
Yeah.
reality? Because we had the election of Thomas Messi where he lost. He got prime
Yes.
minister.
Yeah, but
So
uh, do you know Dave Smith?
no.
He's a podcaster, comedian. He appeared often on Tucker. I think I watched more episodes from of his podcast than I'm comfortable admitting. Do, but he's a libertarian, so I don't really agree with his views on economics and many political issues. But he's very anti-war since 2022. That's when I
Okay.
started to follow him, when he was, close to Anonymous. So no one knew about him. I discovered him, let's say, first. Then he became more and more famous. So he told Tucker then. Our side, the anti-war, anti-establishment, anti-lobby, won the debate. So they crushed every time on Piers Morgan, on every talk show. They crushed the pro-Israeli side, the pro-war side on every topic, every debate.
And still,
But on the policy game, they're always winning. Always the side of Ben Shapiro, of Fox, of Lindsey Graham. They always win the policy game. And the election of Thomas Messi, yeah, so Thomas Messi lost, but also the Israeli lobby spent, I think, over $30 million on this
well,
victory.
spent the
Yes,
millions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer money to
and
get Thomas Messi out of Congress.
yes, but you see that it works on the state level, because on the state level, it really matters if you get to the radio, if you're talked about on the radio, on the local newspapers, the local TV, maybe on in a presidential race. Everybody knows about you.
Hmm.
So I don't think this kind of manipulation with pumping money to get the win, to get the victory. I'm not sure it would work on a national scale. But he also won because all the boomers who watch Fox News voted for the candidate supported by Caligula, by Trump. I call him Caligula.
Yeah, no worries. He can
prefer
be
no longer,
Caligula. He can be
yeah,
Nero.
I prefer no longer to use the T words. I'm calling him Caligula.
Well, I mean,
But
since
the
the
youth
90s,
voted overwhelmingly for Messi.
sure, but
Liverpool.
the youth also voted overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders in the primaries of the Democratic Party in 2016, and I think also in 2020. And the establishment of the Democratic Party managed to get Hillary Clinton on the ticket, and then in 2020 to get Joe Biden. But my point is, even though you have this, let's say, awakening of the people regarding the forces that control America and so on, if people stick to this bipartisanship, if people stick to this false dichotomy of you either have to vote Republican or you have to vote Democrat, then the establishment, the only thing it needs to do is to tip the inner elections, the primaries basically, from each of these two parties, and they basically manage to do this with every such election for many decades, except for the one of Trump. So Trump was actually opposed by the establishment, but then it was co-opted. So I would like to share your optimism, but I would like to see how this enthusiasm that is on the internet and that is among young people translates into actual moving of the levers and of the cogs of power, because it has yet to prove itself in the real world.
So I didn't say that I'm absolutely optimistic about the United States, but more optimistic than about Europe, because in Europe we don't have that.
True. If we take Europe as a whole, yeah, that's true. Europe as a whole looks like a caricature. It's kind of like North Korea, the caricature we have of North Korea, but with I don't know, Western figures and speaking Western languages. But yeah, Ursula von der Leyen, Kaya Kallas, um, this type of establishment. However, in Europe, we have a lot of heterogeneity. I think even more than in the United States, because in the United States there are blue states and there are red states, and they might differ on things that are not very important, but they all support the imperialist agenda. Whereas in Europe, the agenda in Europe is not. I mean, Europe also takes part in the imperialist agenda, but not as the hegemon, but as the
Junior
vassal of the
hegemony.
hegemon. And inside Europe, there is heterogeneity with regard to how they see the hegemon. So, for example, the Nordic countries have some sort of Stockholm syndrome, and even though Trump continues to threaten to annex Greenland, they still hop on every foreign policy initiative that he has. Denmark, who is in danger of having most of its territory annexed, supported Trump's war on Iran, and so on. But then you have countries like Spain, who do not take part in this mass formation, to quote the clinical psychologist Matthias Desmet. They're somehow not in this collective mindset of, oh, we must do everything for the wish of daddy, for daddy's interests from across the pond, because he has our interests at heart, and so on. Spain also has this historical beef with the United States. The last foreign war that Spain ever fought was against the United States, and it lost the territories of Puerto Rico and Cuba and the Philippines and the Mariana Islands and Guam in 1898. And the Spaniards are also less enamored by the Anglo Saxons, just like the Latin Americans are by the well, the Yankees. They have this like resistance perception, this idea that those imperialists are coming to colonize them and they should resist. And for example, one thing that Spanish people do, and it is a sort of form of passive resistance against imperialism, is that they do not know English. It's actually very funny. Even podcasters, Spanish podcasters, who claim to have studied in the United States, have an abysmal level of English. When they try to quote something in English, their consonants get all mixed up, and they can barely say something coherent. So, for example, not learning English is a form of anti-imperialist struggle, and the Spanish are definitely good at it.
Yes, but look at who's calling the shots in Europe. It's not Spain.
That's true.
It's,
Unfortunately, it's Germany because they're the biggest
it's not
country.
even Italy. It's Germany. It's uh, France. Let's say I think on the clearly on the second place. Now it's also Poland. some the Chihuahua countries, the Baltics, the Scandinavians, they're calling the shots,
That's true.
especially the Germans. And
That's true. But unfortunately, yeah.
if you look at the distribution of power in Europe, so the North, the developed North is totally dominating in decision making. And if you look at the general opinion, you look at the polls, I mean, all of them are completely buying the establishment narrative. I think it's mainly because they have efficient states. So there's efficient welfare states. They're becoming welfare states, but they started as welfare states. So people have the tendency to trust the authorities, even when the authorities are calling to, rearming and then war with Russia by 2030 and so on. And as long as these countries are staying on this track, I think Europe's trajectory is irreversible. I don't see how
That's
Spain
kind of true.
or even Italy can turn the tide.
Yeah, I was about to quote Bulgaria also as an example, but yeah, maybe it's not so, maybe it's not so relevant. Yeah, you're right. So the main the, the the center of gravity is definitely Germany, and then the Nordic countries put in a lot of mass in the decision making, and therefore they are responsible for the majority of the trajectory. They are the vectors that mostly contribute to the direction where we're at. It's true that it seems kind of irreversible in the sense that we seem to be kind of path dependent. But then again, because the agenda is so dramatic, it's probably going to be a short trajectory. So we're not going to agonize for many years. It's going to be we will
Yeah, I
reach
think
the end of our agenda in I don't know, by the end of the decade or whenever they are planning the big confrontation.
yeah, I think the wheels will come off in Europe. Yeah, maybe even in a few months due to the energy situation. The bad part is, I think that they'll try even more to shift all the emphasis on geopolitics. So when the domestic economy will be crumbling, when fuel prices will go to the roof because the strategic reserves will be emptied. I think they will pour more money into rearming, into war propaganda, just to deflect
Yeah.
attention from
It was
the.
the same mechanism that they did during the pandemic with the vaccines when it became obvious that the vaccines were not stopping transmission. They were with this hot potato in their hands. So the solution that they came up with is to find a group to scapegoat. So it was not the problem of the vaccines that they were not stopping transmission. It was the problem of the unvaccinated that did not buy into the story, and therefore the health crisis was their fault. The vaccines were working, but only as long as you did not meet the unvaccinated, because then the vaccines stopped working, and then you became sick and you'd go to
Yes,
the
and
ICU even though you were vaccinated.
what's even more frustrating is I think the inflection point was last year. I think it was the last time when Europe could, stop going on this path, when they could turn back and see a more reasonable future. Uh, but I don't know if I really don't understand why. Uh, they kept pushing for rearming, and then the train has left the station, and anything short of an total economic or political collapse can change it. That's how I see things.
So last year,
And
when they decided about the SAFE program or about general
yes, yes,
rearming,
yes,
yeah,
yes. So after the United States pretending to be decoupling
ah,
from
yeah.
the war with Russia, the proxy war with Russia, I think that's the moment when Europe could have also uh, taken a step back, but they didn't.
Well,
I
that
think
was the whole arrangement.
Yes.
America would have not pretended to remove itself from the war had it not already been sure that Europe would come in to shoulder the situation.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think I think
it was just a way of proxying the war even more,
yes, but
to externalize it.
I think that was the plan under Brandon, I mean Biden. But I think Caligula was didn't plan ahead that much. I think he, at least at the beginning, genuinely wanted to see an end to it, just to get a new victory for his some new hot air for his peanut gallery. And it didn't work out, so he tried to put pressure on Russia, then pressure again to put pressure on Ukraine, and again on Russia, again on Ukraine.
Mhm.
I didn't see any coherent plan on Caligula's side. And I think for the Europeans, the explanation is frustratingly much more stupid than we would like to admit. So we can talk about the power of the military industrial lobby. We can talk about, I don't know, the strategic interest of Europe to keep the Americans in, as the senior partner, or to keep the Americans in for to solve their
Keep the
decision.
Americans into what? Because I
Uh,
keep hearing this, like, okay, to keep America in, to defend us from whom? From our
Yeah,
main gas supplier, from the countries that
no,
we were
I
trading with.
think the main thing is that when you have a hegemon, when you have a daddy, daddy can solve any potential conflict between us. So we don't have to worry
So
about
for
fighting
internal
each
cohesion.
other in the future. Yes, so we have a kind of policeman over the whole continent. Also, daddy solves many our decision-making problems. We don't have to fight with each other because daddy tells us what to do, and it worked well for so many decades, so why not continue it?
Mhm.
That can also be an explanation, but I think it's actually even more stupid. I think it's just institutional inertia. I think there's nothing calling the no single person or group of person calling the shots, no special interest. I mean, there's special interest, but I don't think they're calling the shots. I think it's just pure institutional inertia. They embarked
Yeah,
on
it
this
could be.
path, and no one has the columns, no one has the willpower to change it. The media is already on this track, so uh, they by reflex will call anyone calling for changes. Putin verstehe, a Putin puppet. Uh,
Sure, but I mean, institutional inertia can explain things continuing to move in the same direction on the same trajectory, as long as they do not encounter a crisis. But when the crisis is looming, okay, maybe it hasn't yet been felt by the bureaucrats. Maybe in 6 months' time, they will have some sort of moment of awakening, seeing that fuel depots are empty, that I don't know, fuel prices are very high, and I'm willing to go with the theory of institutional inertia, but not until the moment when catastrophe looms, because then there should be some sort of vital instincts kicking in. You cannot just go with inertia because you've done that yesterday and you will do it tomorrow because there is no more tomorrow, or I don't know. And regarding what you said about the United States, do you follow Brian Berletic from the New Atlas?
yeah, yeah,
He has this theory that there is continuity of agenda, and
yes,
Democratic presidents and Republican presidents do not really decide anything. It's just they basically offer the interface that people can blame stuff on, but then there's this institutional apparatus, these governmental think tanks that kind of do the planning, and that it was all kind of planned ahead. It also appears in their policy papers, how to set up these proxy wars with their geopolitical rivals. So I'm not sure if Trump negotiated in goodwill. So I mean, the outcome was definitely non-existent, but I'm not sure if Trump actually wanted to find some sort of solution, or it was just a matter of buying time or to lead his counterpart off, just like Angela Merkel and François Hollande admitted that they had done with the Minsk agreements, that the Minsk agreements were also not negotiated in good faith, and
Yeah, but they
there
could
was a
have
kind of
admitted that just to, you know, shut up their critics. I mean, if the general tone, the main idea is that appeasing is bad, of course you don't want to present your genuine attempt at negotiation as appeasing. You want to claim that, oh no, I was trying to trick him. I mean, that may be
okay.
an explanation. And with Caligula, I don't presume that there is much consistency, long-term consistency in his plans. I don't know if he's was trying to, deceive his negotiating partners, whether it's Iran or Russia or Venezuela, for that matter. I'm not sure he was trying that. I don't know whether he's capable of such long-term planning.
Maybe
Uh,
he doesn't have to be. So, as Putin also said like 10 or 15 years ago, I think, regarding Obama, that there are all sorts of presidents coming and going, and when they come into office, they all have these great plans and great ideas and whatever. And then the people in blue suits come and they tell these presidents what should be done actually, and they conform. So maybe there is some sort of so maybe Trump just posts erratic stuff on his Truth Social account, but he doesn't really have access to the levers. So maybe there are some underground forces that are part of the permanent state and that do these things, and he's just informed of what he has to announce or something. I don't know.
yes, I mean it could be let's say the CIA, but I don't know if I don't intimately know the American political system, how the machine works. I mean, I think it's the military-industrial lobby who still pays for the campaigns and donates to much of the Republican
And they
represent.
also pay the think tanks, so the like Brookings Institute and the Rand Corporation. They're also funded by the same corporations, by the same interests, and they're the ones doing the policy work. Congress people just raise their hands when they have to vote, but the real strategies are drawn up by these think tanks.
Uh, Yes, so I mean, it's very clear that that the U.S. state apparatus didn't want to completely detach from the Ukraine thing. I mean, they didn't want to detach from Afghanistan until the last moment. I don't think it's because they really thought they have very important interests to defend there, but it's just a project. People are working on it. You don't want to. I don't
Institutional inertia.
exactly. You don't know how to stop it. You don't want to tell so many people, guys, stop whatever you're doing. We are changing direction. And because they can afford to. I mean, it's the United States. They're geopolitically insulated from facts. They think they can afford to make these mistakes, to engage in worthless projects on the long term, and nothing very bad will happen. Uh, and I think generally the main benefit of living in the United States is being insulated from geopolitics, and it has worked for a very very long time. It may stop working now with the war with Iran, but they will still be better off than I think pretty much anyone else on the planet. And I think that explains in good part why the US is so hard to uh, deflect from whatever they are doing. Also,
Because
from
they do not receive the consequences. This is what you mean
yes,
when you say that they are
I
insulated
mean
from
any serious
geopolitics.
consequences. Sure, their bases in the Middle East can get blasted. Some of
But the
their
people at home
personnel.
don't feel the consequences.
So at home, and the people in power never feel any consequence. You know, let's let's think about this counterfactual situation. Let's say Russia didn't invade Ukraine, but let's say they could predict what will happen if they invade Ukraine. Do you think, let's say it's February 24th, 2022, do you think Putin would do the same thing, knowing what it will lead to? I'm not
Well,
so sure.
actually, yeah, you
Oh,
know.
okay, maybe completely in a completely other manner. Maybe you would have gone went much harder on Ukraine. Maybe he would have never depart Kiev, during the first round of
No,
negotiations.
the thing is,
But
the reason why I'm saying this is because I cannot put myself in the shoes of the Russian administration because I don't have access to the kind of information that they have, and I can assume based on what they did various things. I can assume that they knew more than we know, or I can assume that they knew exactly as much as we know, and then maybe some of their actions did not make sense. But it's hard for me to evaluate at this point what made sense, what didn't make sense. Maybe they had some sort of cascading scenarios, and they went for scenario A, and once that didn't work, they went for scenario B. But you mean with the benefit of foresight to knowing what worked and what didn't? For example, they started negotiating this agreement in Istanbul in April 2022, and that went nowhere. And as a gesture of goodwill, they say the Russians withdrew their artillery from around Kiev, but then they were basically double crossed, and the Ukrainians just seized the moment to continue fighting, whereas they had apparently negotiated in good faith that they would seek some sort of compromise or something. Um, you can look at it with the benefit of hindsight and see it as a mistake, or you can see it as some sort of stage that had to be done, had to be tried in order for the next one to be approached. Because, for example, both Russia and China, and I think also Iran, are quite legalistic, and they also put a lot of emphasis on diplomacy, even when they see that diplomacy is not really yielding any results. But they still do it nonetheless, just to have it as a step that's covered, and for the rest of the world to see that they were the ones willing to compromise. So I don't know, maybe in their equation, it's very important to be seen as negotiating, for example, even if the negotiations are unsuccessful. I don't know.
yeah, it can be the case. But my point was the following one. So Russia bears a huge cost for this war. We can be sure of that. So
For sure,
they
yeah.
had
Yeah.
turned their economy into our economy. Their a part of the Kursk Oblast was evaded, was occupied for several months. Even Moscow was reached by some Ukrainian drones and many other regions, the refineries. So they they are suffering a cost, and they pay a blood price. So you know.
For sure, yeah.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of casualties. Uh, when did the United States pay anything close to that? Maybe 9/11, but it
No, not
didn't.
even. I mean, probably
Pearl
9/11 was.
Harbor was Hawaii, but it was not in the even in the real USA.
Yeah, Haiti had just been incorporated as a state. I mean, yeah, well, it's true that the United States does not pay this kind of price, but the whole stake of this process, the moving from unipolarity to multipolarity, is not exactly to inflict pain on the United States or to make the United States pay a price. Is to just dismantle the entire empire that the United States built. So, okay, maybe the U.S. will not incur incremental damage. It will not pay these costs that its rivals pay when they have to fight these proxy wars, but it will pay the ultimate cost when its empire disentangles, when there's going to be, for example, no more demand for the treasury bonds. because this international system is mostly okay. It is also kept in place through military force, but from an economic point of view, it is kept in place through demand for dollars, and therefore the recirculation of these dollars into dollar denominated assets. And the United States only allows bonds to be bought by foreigners, and this is how the system is going. This is how the foreign vassals basically contribute to the financing of the U.S. Budgetary deficit and so on. So yeah, it's true that Russia is incurring a big cost, but at this point, I think it's too early to tell whether the strategy worked or not, and what components of the strategy should have been approached otherwise. We also don't really know what is the what's the end strategy of Russia. So okay, the strategy of the United States is kind of like to have this network of proxy wars to ensure the network of vassals, to ensure that the vassals remain in place and that the rivals are weakened. But the way Russia approaches strategy, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we cannot really imagine because we don't have access to information. So we can make deductions from the outside, but I don't know how useful they would be.
Yes, but we can make some, enforced. We can make some informed predictions, informed speculation, based on what we observed along the years. And I think we got a long way from 2022 in our understanding of
Hmm.
how the world geopolitics work. And I think the biggest victory for the multipolar crowd would be to put a serious dent in the United States' ability to impose sanctions. I think that
Hmm.
would be the single best victory for the BRICS countries, but not only. So to
Yeah,
offer alternatives.
to create a parallel financial circuit so as to render the United States impotent in sanctioning countries. Yeah, that's kind of the
But
game.
that can have some nasty effects for the local populations. I mean, look at what Russia is doing with the internet. I think they realize that you can't be a true world power to be truly sovereign as an empire without your own internet, without your own big apps. So yeah, they already have Yandex, but people are using Google. They have Max, but people are using Telegram, which, although it started as a Russian company, it moved in the Gulf, in Dubai, I think, or in the UAE,
Well, the headquarters,
and now
the servers I think are in Dubai, yeah, and it didn't
yes,
really start as a Russian company. The founder is Russian, but he wanted to keep it independent from the state, so he
yes,
wanted
yes.
to.
But the idea is that Russia is now trying to ban the foreign apps. So they're trying to replace YouTube with RuTube. They already replaced Facebook with Vkontakte, Telegram and WhatsApp with Max,
Mhm,
which can't even be downloaded anywhere outside Russia, I think. You
mhm,
can't Max from Google Play.
uh-huh.
Uh, China has already done that. So China already has WeChat, Weibo, Temu, their own TikTok, Bilibili,
Billy,
and
Billy, yeah. I keep on hearing.
yes,
I listen to this Spanish guy who does this geopolitical blog, and he always mentions Billy Billy. Yeah, you want to see me on Billy Billy? You want me banned from YouTube? See me on Billy Billy. This is where I know Billy Billy from.
yeah, Bilibili is nice for watching movies. If you don't want to pay for Netflix, you can find some movies on Bilibili.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but yeah, the main idea was that yeah, for from this logic of state sovereignty, it makes sense to have your own internet to insulate yourself as much as possible from the United States, from the influence of the United States. But for the local population, it sucks. I mean, imagine you have access to YouTube today, and tomorrow you will be restricted on the local language internet. So you only have you can only hear to, let's say, Romanian podcasts. Of course, the Russian internet is much larger than ours because their population is much bigger. Maybe it won't feel exactly that way. But imagine so you no longer can go on YouTube to connect with people from abroad. You have to watch state approved content on YouTube.
But are you sure that it's an exclusionary measure? Because I can understand the logic of nationalizing these platforms in the sense of providing your own national platforms.
Oh,
But
no, 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 no. They are trying to ban the others. That's the main idea. So
yeah.
they're not just creating Max. They're trying to ban Telegram, and they are even cranking down on VPNs.
Well, okay, for let's say message exchange platforms, I don't think it's such. I don't think it's so important to have a certain
No, it's
app
not
and
that
not
important.
another. But in terms of
Yes.
consuming content, yeah, then it's important because
Okay.
some content will be. But yeah, I'm not sure. I have no idea what the plans of the Russian government are in this
And
respect. Do they
it
also
was
want to
also
ban YouTube?
yes, yes, they're making moves in that direction. So I listened to some Russian podcasters, and they were complaining that some stupid apparatchiks, some stupid Soviet boomers, don't know how to justify their government jobs, so they're just inventing tasks like, hey, let's ban foreign internet, let's ban VPNs because they don't have any more creative ways of fighting, foreign influence.
But how did China do it? Because I guess Russia can take the inspiration from China. I think Chinese internet users are not banned from the larger internet, and they're not banned from these platforms. They just have the national
No,
version.
they are. Oh no, I think they are, and they have to use VPNs to access YouTube or Google. Or
Ah, okay, sure. And then they use VPN, but uh,
we can access their apps, so I can access Weibo or
yeah,
Bilibili or
but not the other
WeChat.
way.
I think they can't access ours. Yeah. Ours. I mean, the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what's the purpose. I thought regarding Max, the idea is to have some sort of domestic located message exchange service. So just so as to, I don't know, prohibit to not allow any kind of foreign operations to take place on your territory or something. But regarding consuming content, I don't know. I think they will still have access to the international press. I mean, it would seem very strange. It would seem North Korean style to ban any kind of foreign website, to ban foreign press, to ban foreign content. Um,
Yes, but I think they're moving that direction. With Telegram and Max, I think it makes military sense because Pavel Durov was arrested in France, and
yeah,
then
exactly. He was
got
forced
out.
to give up
You
the
don't
encryption
know
keys on
what
his news.
you don't know what he gave them for his
Yeah,
liberation, but you don't want to risk that. You don't want to risk, I don't know, the uh, military communications to be exposed to the other side during a war.
sure, sure. Probably not exactly military. I think the people have encrypted communication channels. They don't depend on Durov's Telegram,
I
but
mean, they have
I
alternatives, but
understand. I
Telegram
understand.
is by far the main medium of communication, even within the army.
Really?
And they also receive intel from Ukraine. I think it works on both sides. You have your local agents.
Hmm.
Maybe you pay them, maybe they are loyal to you, and they give you info about targets, about
Okay, yeah, whistleblowers and stuff like this. Yeah.
yes, but since Max will be completely insulated, it will work both ways. So probably the Ukrainians will lose much of their ability to find you know
Local collaborators in Russia.
collaborators within Russia, and Russia will lose the ability to do that in Ukraine. But other side effects will be that on Telegram there is some freedom of speech that you can't find on any other platform. Do not be sure that will be the case. And many Russian Telegram channels and Ukrainian Telegram channels can freely speak about the issues of their own sides. So you can see many complaining about even the leadership, even the supreme leaders. Sometimes, they even complain about
But
Putin. They,
are
they can
these
talk about
genuine? I mean, for example, there are also intoxication channels. There are channels that pretend to be of
yes,
a
yes,
division in the Ukrainian army, of the Russian army, and they are obviously not, because they do not have such freedom inside the army to post whatever they want on social media. But they're just
yeah,
claiming.
of course, but uh, if you look at the Russian local media, it's very clear that they can't freely speak about most of the issues with the economy, with the army. So they get a memo and they have to keep it. So they always have to keep a line.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, Russia always had those tendencies, and during a war, they are expanded,
exacerbate. Yeah.
exacerbated. Yes. Uh, it also happens, of course, in Ukraine. I mean, you know that you can't talk whatever you want about
Of course, obviously. Even in Romania, I mean,
uh, and also from what I heard, some I think trusted sources, trusted analysts, the before the war, the trajectory in Russia was uh, going to a kind of feudal stratified society where the apparatchiks and their relatives uh, dominated politics, dominated the local administration, and were ready to create some local dynasties.
mhm.
And in a way, the war stopped the process, because you can't keep that kind of local corruption when you have to wage war against you.
Yeah, it produced a shake-up. Lots of people were arrested, also from the military, because of corruption.
Yes, and in the last year, a lot of corruptors from the Azerbaijani businessmen, that was that scandal last year with
Yeah,
Azerbaijan.
just I think when the government of Azerbaijan signed some sort of agreement, I don't remember exactly what, with the West, and
Yes,
they
and
cracked down.
they also have laws such as that you can't you know talk crap about the army. You can't uh, how what's the word for that?
To
So
defame.
yeah, you're not allowed to defame the army, the
Yeah,
Russian armed forces, and of course, I mean, I'm in some ways a liberal, at least in this respect. So I value freedom of speech. I would not like my country to become like Russia at least in that. So I would like to have
sure.
Russia's energy or in industrial capacity, but I would not like censorship and
No, of
state
course,
control media.
this is not
But we are
something
moving in that
radical in
direction.
itself.
We are
It's
moving in
something,
that direction.
something. It can be something Western. If the West decides to go to war, we'll have the same type of censorship
Yes,
and repression and
exactly. Yeah,
everything. It will just be called. I don't know. It will be called enhanced democracy, or we will find some sort of hypocritical term for
yeah,
it.
and
It's
that's the
enhanced freedom of speech when we will be censored and something
That's a
like this.
big difference. You know the joke about the propaganda in the Soviet Union versus the United
Yeah.
States, where yeah, in Soviet Union everybody knows to how to see where the propaganda lies, but in the United States they don't, are not even aware that there is some kind of propaganda, and in Europe even less.
Yeah. Well. Um, Yeah, in the West, propaganda is regarded as the fish from the tank regards water. It's just something that blends with the environment, and you don't distinguish it. You don't see it. You only see it when I don't know, when it makes too many mistakes and it becomes too obvious. So, for example, I started seeing it during the pandemic. Before, I thought, I don't know, I just maybe willingly did not see it. I maybe it was always there, but. The glass did not break, and yeah, during the pandemic they exaggerated a lot, and this is when I started to see. This is when I got red pilled.
There is one other thing I wanted to talk about. Uh, so I found a French analytic philosopher, I mean a PhD, Philippe Lemoine. He had some very interesting pieces on Substack about uh, how Westerners and mainly Europeans think about geopolitics, about international relations. So I'm not talking about decision makers necessarily, or about people with interest in pushing for war. I'm talking about your uh, generic liberal in the West. So that many people maybe they don't want to spend 5% of GDP on weapons. Maybe they don't want a military society or a mandatory military service, but they think it's not appropriate to do nothing about, let's say, the
Mhm.
war in Ukraine. So they may have the same general goals as we do. So we want the war to stop. That's the main thing.
Mhm.
And we don't want, we're not attached to any specific outcome of the war. We want it to stop. We want people to stop dying. We want uh, to stop throwing money towards the military production companies. Uh, but we have different means of achieving that. We want to stop the war by negotiating, even if it means making compromises.
Mhm.
Uh, they act according to some principle of appropriateness. So if it's not appropriate, for example, not to sanction the aggressor, even if it means that your economy will suffer, your civilian population will suffer, and their government will not be touched by those sanctions. The same with Iran. So these sanctions usually only target the civilian population, and
So they are kind
by
of Kantian in their approach. They have
yeah,
this
by the boomerang effect, they
perception
are.
of duty,
Yeah. So there is
political duty.
you can't just do nothing. You have to do something. You have to be opposed to the aggressor. You have
Otherwise, you're not a
to.
good person. So you have to, at
Yes, you
least
have to be a
as
good
token
person. Yeah,
value, you have to give some sort of sacrifice to the
yeah.
cause.
Because you can't just make a deal with the devil. I think that's the idea.
Sure, I
So
mean, once they start moralizing it to such an extent that they regard Putin as Hitler, then of course you cannot do appeasement, you should not do compromise, you should not talk to Hitler, right? So,
also, it's very weird, very strange that liberals who are supposed not to take, borders so seriously. I mean, usually they're pro open borders. They usually are deconstructivist uh,
not
when
towards
it comes
Ukraine's borders, and
to
also
national needs,
they're
national
very
mythology.
deconstructivist towards nationalisms, but not towards the nationalism of Ukraine. So any other country is not allowed to have a national story, to have a sort of
No,
national
Ukraine
pride.
or any other country. which is in conflict or next to the big bad guy. I mean, I think it would work the same way with Taiwan or with, I don't know, the Philippines, if it comes to that. Uh, and it's very strange to see those people so attached to the formal internal border of the Soviet Union. Because because
Well,
that's
for them, it's not the formal internal border of the Soviet Union. It's the sacred right of the Ukrainian people for autodetermination, to live in freedom and democracy, to live alongside the West. And probably they regard the Eastern Ukrainians as some sort of captives, as some sort of hostages to the Russians. They do not
I mean,
regard the Russian
okay.
speakers in the east of Ukraine as
Yeah, I
normal.
mean, some of them I think are hostages. I mean, I heard of some organized resistance or some complaints of, cranking down on Ukrainian language or Ukrainian defiance in those regions. But yeah, largely, I think they don't care much about who runs the place. Maybe in Donbass, they are very pro-Russian, from what I hear. I think in the other regions, they tend to care far less about who runs the place, as long as they can live somewhat normal lives. Uh, but what I wanted to point out is that some people who are otherwise not subjected to the effects of the war are willing to fight for some borders. So for who runs the government in eastern Ukraine, or yeah, it's not only about Ukraine, in other places as well, because it's that principle. You cannot change borders by force. So if that's a
So as
principle
a matter of principle.
upheld, so uh, you have to do anything. I'm talking about how your uh, usual your normie liberal things, not about
So the same
decision
normie
making.
liberals would defend the modification of Serbia's borders as a consequence of NATO bombing in 1999, the self-determination of the Kosovars, not of the Crimeans in 2014, not of the people of the Donbass, but of the Kosovars for sure, because it was their countries that bombed Serbia to relinquish that province. So there are these internal
Yes,
contradictions.
yes, and I would say that I value consistency here, and I don't care on which side of consistency you fall on. If let's say you care about borders and you don't want to see border changes anywhere for any kind of reason, let's say without a very clear, very legal referendum or something. Or let's say you're more like me, more of an anarchist. I'm not an anarchist, but in some ways I lean to it. And you think borders are kind of fake, that people are more important than governments. Yeah, and about that, so I mentioned that I'm an anarchist. In some way, I am an anarchist. What I mean by that is that I don't think states have political authority.
Mhm.
In philosophy, in political philosophy, the problem of political authority is about what justifies the authority the state has over individuals. And I don't buy any justification. Social contracts, I never signed one. I never
You
made a
don't
contract with.
regard the state as being just a natural emanation of the will of a people to collectively solve problems that cannot be solved as individuals?
Yes, I mean, I think we need a state. I think the state is useful, but I don't think it has political authority. I mean, I don't think it has the right, for example, to force me to fight for its preservation. I don't think the state has rights over us. I think it's useful to act as if the state has the right, for example, to imprison some people if they misbehave, or to collect taxes, to redistribute resources. Yes, I think it's fine. So we need some authority to impose social order. What I don't think the state can do is to pretend that we signed a kind of a contract and then we are obliged, in virtue of that contract, to serve the state. I don't think so. When it comes to the most important issues like preserving your life, I think the relation with the state is kaput. It's no longer worth preserving. So
I would come and defend the state by making the following observation. The state is just a vehicle for collective action. So it's actually
yes.
not the state that has political power over you. It is
Oh,
rather the community
but it
as the
is. I
political
mean,
authority. It is rather the community, the collective of which you are a part, which through the power of the state makes you fight for the collective survival, essentially, for the survival of that imagined community that is a nation, let's say. It
okay.
depends also what kind of state we're talking about, because if we're talking about, I don't know, a medieval empire or a medieval kingdom or something like this, then it's different. It's not exactly the collective, because there the people don't have that much in common. Most that they have in common is that they are under that emperor. But when we talk about nation states, we perceive them as an emanation of this collective that is the nation, a community of shared values and shared history and all these things, and shared kinship even. And then it is basically the collective which is imposing on you to die for it, not for the preservation of the state as an abstract entity, but the state is the vehicle through which the collective kind of enforces its will upon you.
Yes, so I would have two responses to that. First of all, I don't think there is any duty to die for any collective. So I never signed the contract with the society or with other people to preserve their right, I don't know, to speak their own language in public institutions, or to live in a place called Romania, for example. I never had such an agreement with anyone, implicit or explicit. So I don't know why I have to defend, why I have to be obliged to defend them. I mean, let's imagine we as a group of friends are taking a trip, mountain trip, and let's say some burglar comes and threatens us with something like that. We give him our money or he will kill us. And let's say some members of our group say, okay, Tudor and Adrian, you two will go to find the burglar. Even though he's armed, you can die during the process. You have to fight. Okay, but why? Oh, why? Because we are a group of friends. I mean, we are a collective. So of course you have to preserve our right to keep our money, our belongings. And look, in the past we had transactions between us, so we provided you services in exchange for money. So that creates a duty for you to to defend us. And think about what will happen if you refuse to fight. We lose our money. So of course we had to fight, even if you're ready to give up or to appease the burglar. Okay, I think in that case it would be obvious that I don't have any duty to defend a group, especially
Sure.
when all.
I think this duty rather derives historically from the fact that there were these invasions, like the Mongol invasion and so on, that would basically wipe out lineages. So then your duty was not towards friends, but rather towards kinship relations, towards people who carry your genes forward. So you are defending your wife at home, your children, and through collective
Okay, then.
tit
Okay,
for
but
tat.
what if I can take my family out of there and move somewhere else?
Then yeah, you have no more duty because first of all, if you take your family out of there, then you take yourself out of there as well, and then any obligation extinguishes itself because it can no longer be enforced.
Also, it's not like the occupied population will be left stateless. They will have another state, maybe a worse
Sure.
one. but I don't
Okay, if you
think.
look at the case of Ukraine, but if you look at the case of Palestine, then it's a bit different because it's not
No,
like
I think
Israel.
even in the case of Palestine, I think as a Palestinian, I would not have any obligation to defend any political authority with my life. I mean, I have a single life. I have only two hands, only two legs. I can't replace them if I lose them. I don't think any kind of social arrangement is worth defending by putting my life in
No,
harm's
no.
way. I think my family, maybe my friends, maybe my local community, at most, is worth defending, and that's also my choice. I'm a strong individualist in this respect. So in this way, I lean to anarchism, but only this way. So
Mhm.
I think states, also I think when you defend your country in a war, uh, you're not quite defending a community. You are defending some bureaucrats in the central government.
So you do not see the state as being the instrument. You see it as something that
I
has
mean,
an end to itself.
I mean, it is an instrument, but it's an instrument that took a lot of autonomy, and it's self-interested. So yeah, I mean, it can vary from state to state. If you have a social state that really takes care of the population, maybe you have more of an argument. I still think it fails because
It's
what I
true that
said earlier.
it's true that growing up in Romania kind of makes you an anarchist just because you don't. Yeah, it's very hard to regard the Romanian state as functioning to the interest of its citizens. So yeah, I
Yes,
can
so
understand that argument.
the libertarian view of the state is more like there is a clique of power hungry people who get a lot of power by being elected or by being put in office, and they leverage their power to extract taxes from the citizens and to put their relatives in secure jobs. Um, and I think in at least in many cases this is largely accurate. In Romania certainly, and I wouldn't fight to preserve that. I mean, why do I care if the local administration, if some Romanian counties is replaced by a foreign one? I don't care that
How,
much.
how I would look at the model, because I was also seduced by libertarianism a long time ago, but now how I would critique this model that libertarians have regarding the state is that actually empirically looking, the power hungry psychopaths that seize power in a society are not the ones that run the state. They are the billionaire class, they're the Epstein class, they are the people who are so psychotic that they amass large fortunes, and they create all sorts of levers of blackmail in society so as to preserve their power and so on, and they manage to make the state function in their favor, like the American state. But a state is a neutral vehicle. It can function in the interest of whoever exerts more power onto it. And traditionally, democracies have this mechanism through elections and through parties and through people standing for office, that they are able to balance off a bit of the power that the big economic interests have, and therefore they can make the state function more to their interest. But it's true that if you have a state that's completely failed, like, well, I know I don't want to quote the United States necessarily, but for example, there are states in Africa that function just for the benefit of a small clique, and they're not democracies. They're basically some sort of oligarchies and so on. Yeah, I can agree that there's no point dying for the ruling class if the state is a ruling class. But in my vision of the state, okay, and okay, maybe it's more of a welfare state inspired model from Western Europe. But my ideal model of a state is that in which it is somehow an emanation of the will of the citizens, and of course there is corruption, there is abuse of power, and all these things, but they are somehow the bugs of something that is more of a feature. The state is generally an instrument for collective action to provide all sorts of things that citizens cannot get for themselves. And the psychopaths in society are the, well, owners of capital, so to say. To honor my shirt, since I put on this shirt, I should use this terminology. So it's the capital
So,
that is the psychopath.
so that's why not I'm not a libertarian. I just said that I'm sympathetic to some libertarian views or arguments. And I think political philosophers and political scientists do a very good job of, devising ways of limiting state power. The division of power in a state, all sorts of methods to improve democracy, to improve public accountability. But I think very few of them uh, took care to look over the other big source of, you know. Entrenched power. I mean, power given by money, by wealth. So I think it's quite obvious that, just compare. Let's say we have a graph with the power of a politician versus, I don't know, some kind of multi-billionaire. So the power of the politician spikes when he gets into office, the day he gets into office, and goes sharply down when he left office. So it looks something like that. No, so he depends for his power on that
Even
office.
though
I
it's
mean,
more of a sinusoid, because then he goes into think tanks and then he gets re-elected or gets a political
yeah,
appointment
yeah, yeah. More
4 years
recently,
from
yes,
now and so on, if he served the right interests.
yeah. So he'll come back. So he's more of a sinusoidal, yeah. But
Or you have people
but
who just plateau, like, I don't know, you have Hillary Clinton or Dianne Feinstein, or I don't know, there are some Democrats that have been in the Chamber of Representatives since times immemorial, since the 1980s, and they're still there.
yeah,
Like,
yes, yes, yes. But their power is completely dependent upon their public office. I mean, if you remove them from there, surely they will retain some power. They will maybe occupy some posts in some think tanks or some other crap like that. But uh, their main source of power is their office, their public office. If you look at extremely wealthy people, their power is their money, and
and their power is permanent. It has no term
yeah,
limitations.
exactly. So in a free market society, especially, uh, you can't you can't touch that. And even more importantly, in many liberal states, you can't even put a limit into how much money they can pour into politics to get
Yeah,
some
yeah,
other
of
kind of.
course. I
Yeah,
mean, if we take the United States as a model or as an object of discussion, for sure we can find many flaws in the construction of a state, because for me the United States is just an absurdity, being run only by two powers. I mean, people being so brainwashed. This is something I wanted to say regarding what you said, how to limit uh, how states have how well societies have managed to limit the powers of certain groups. They have not managed to prevent groupthink. So I think groupthink is the main liability, because this is what makes Germans go to war. This is what makes Americans vote only for the Republicans and the Democrats. It's basically, you have a lot of options, but you're caught in this paradigm where you feel that there's only one option, or in the case of the United States, two options, but they're the same in most things. And there's a majority in these societies that are just captive to this paradigm. And even though they are free, for example, Americans are free to vote for third parties. They even call them third parties because they're outside the relevant two. But there are lots of parties in the United States, and Americans could easily vote if they wanted to outvote their political class. They don't need a Caligula to go into Washington and drain the swamp. They could just do it with their own ballot boxes. They can vote for the Green Party or the Libertarian Party or the American Communist Party and so on. But they don't. They're just caught in this narrative and they wait for a good Caligula. And this is the result of groupthink. And it's the same in Europe with this.
Okay, you can't eliminate groupthink because it's a feature of the species, not of a given society. I mean, you have to biologically modify humans if you want to eliminate groupthink. But I think you can at least ameliorate the effects If you have
Education should, in principle, work in the opposite direction, right? Because without
yeah,
education,
but
we just do
doesn't.
mimetism. We just imitate what the other monkeys do. Whereas with education, we learn how to think and to derive
No, no,
independent conclusions.
I think
Allegedly.
there's I think there's some ways. I mean, we'll have to see that to see if it really happened. But I think the alternative media, the internet, and the downfall of cable TV will move into that direction over time. I mean, we see the effects in the United States. We see now. I think we witness some shifting coalitions. You can see people on the left and right coming together and they were, let's say, red pilled with respect to the Israel lobby, and many of them are starting to really acknowledge the fact that the billionaires and big corporations are running the country in their own interests, and I think that largely happened due to the podcast movement.
Hmm.
I think it. I would have expected education to play that role, but apparently podcasts and the internet are more efficient as long as you can retain some freedom there. And yeah, I think analytic philosophy in particular would be the best tool on the education side to make people independent thinkers, or at least that's what I would have thought. But unfortunately, many analytic
Until you met the analytical philosophers.
yes, pretty much everywhere. I mean, I suppose it's one thing to be very good at talking about, social epistemology, in lab conditions, and a totally other thing when you have to observe the same realities in the real world. Maybe when your grants depend on keeping some talking points. Yes, but as I said at the beginning, I'm a bit optimistic about what happens in the United States because I think once the boomers will, be
Be
biologically
biologically
removed
replaced by
by,
the
by
next generation.
natural means. So I don't advocate any other way of replacing the boomers. So I think once they're gone, maybe the younger generations will be able to uh, make some changes in the system, especially when the power of the US on the global stage will decline. uh, but I'm not very optimistic. I think I would put my credence into that around at most point 0.4 at most. I rather think it will not happen
Hmm.
uh, because the culture war is still very entrenched in their thinking. They can't vote with the other side because I don't know, they're racist, or they're the degenerates who want to trans our kids or something. Uh, I mean, just look at what happens with the Republicans, with the MAGA movement. So there's, I think, still up to 30% for still supporting Caligula, the core manga movement, because they just can't uh, uh, agree with the libs, with the woke left. So if the woke left criticizing Caligula for going at war with Iran, they have to be against that because it's the woke left. I mean, you can't agree with them. And I think the culture war is the single most obstacle in the way of forming a populist coalition which serves the people and is against the ruling class, the big capital, and the billionaires. Uh, I think it's also the case in Romania, but less
Yeah, I
than in
wanted
the.
to point this out. So, in Europe in general, the populist movements on the left and on the right see each other as enemies, unfortunately. So
Yes.
they do not see each other as similar movements that can collaborate to overthrow the system or to at least prevent the catastrophe from happening, as in the case of Europe, but they rather see each other as the polar opposites of their position, which is not so much the case. I mean, for example, in Germany, you have Alternative für Deutschland, which is a party that, well, it has some anti-system positions as well. There are some factions inside AfD that want troop withdrawals from the Americans, that want to stop militarization, and so on. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, which wants the same. But they regard each other as enemies. And, well, in Romania, I don't know, I don't want to go into Romanian politics, but yeah, I tried to convince people who are on the sovereigntist right that the sovereigntist left exists and it's not a contradiction in terms. I don't think I was successful in that. But yeah, the culture war takes up most of our energy, unfortunately, and is prohibiting us from fighting the system, which is why it was invented. You mentioned Occupy Wall Street. Right after Occupy Wall Street, the woke movement appeared to cannibalize the left and to move the left from economic grievances to cultural
microaggressions.
ones, yeah, and to create a gender war, and war between sexual orientations, and a color war, and all these intra-pleb wars. So to make the proletarian fight among each other instead of fighting capital. But yeah. Tudor, thank you very much for this discussion. I've taken up a lot of your time. And I would like to ask you if you have any closing remarks.
So I think the most painful thing is to be right on most issues in the last years. What I mean by that, I think when we talk about the pandemic, the vax mandates, the war in Ukraine, the war with Iran, I think the general opinion, even when it didn't change much, it went on our side. I mean, I think more people now are against, prolonging the war, funding the war in Ukraine than in 2022. More people now see the vax mandates, in more critical than they saw them back then in 2021.
The problem
So
is
I
there's a
think
lag. There is a time lag between
yes,
when we
yes.
have predictions and when we are proven right.
Yes, but the most painful thing is to see that I was right on most of these issues from day one. So even with Ukraine, I saw in day one where it will lead. Uh,
Yeah,
I,
it's
I, I,
like
I don't claim that I'm right on every topic. I think, for example, the 2018 referendum, against same-sex marriage, I think I was wrong on that. I think it was not important. I think it's a fake issue. I don't care about that at all now. I'm willing to make allies with the pro-LGBT people if you're all against militarization. So I was wrong on that. I think I was also wrong about Caligula. I thought he will do much better than he did,
yeah, I
but
was
I
also
didn't have
like him.
high expectations. But on most other issues, I think I was right, and it's very frustrating frustrating to be right from day one and to see that it doesn't matter at all. Things are moving in the same direction, and you can do nothing about that.
Yeah, as it was the adage, people who don't know history are cursed to repeat it. People who do know history are cursed to watch the people who don't know history repeat it. Because we are basically, even though we might have the right opinion about things, we're still captive to the film, and we have to see it unfold. Even though we know who's the killer, we know the car is driving towards a cliff and falling off the cliff, we still have to be there and watch it unfold and maybe suffer the consequences, because we are captives in society. What you were saying earlier about the collective, we are bound to living together, and we have to share in on the consequences of the bad decisions of those around us.
Yeah.
Well, everybody follow based
Thank you
Bayesian
for
on
having
Substack.
me.
Sorry.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Tudor, for being on my program, and let's speak soon again.
Yep.
All the best. Take
All the
care.
best.